Hello guys, my name is Kacheatribute and today we're going to see how we can combine Redis with Mediator. In the previous video we saw how we can use Redis in an ASP.NET application, and I'll have a link in the description below, but a long story short, all we did is in our heroes controller we had a get endpoint. We tried to get a hero from our cache, and if we didn't find one, we took that hero from our repository and we added to our cache. So today we're going to see how we can use Mediator and its behaviors, or its pipelines if you prefer, to see how we can implement cache in the application level, since it seems to me that it's an application concern. Now, there's nothing wrong about having a filter in here decorated in each endpoint you want to cast the response, but since there is a lot of documentation about that, let's see how we can use it with Mediator. Now, I don't have any separation of projects like an API, an application, an infrastructure, etc. And for simplicity reasons, I will put anything that has to do with Mediator in an application folder. And as you can see, I have already created the getHero query. It's just a record with an ID property, and in our handler we just return the hero from the repository with that ID. Now, what's the goal here? We want in our query to have an attribute, let's say cache, and also specify the duration, let's say in seconds, so durations equals with 20. Now, so first of all, let's go and create that attribute. I'm going to create a new class. I will call that CacheAttribute, and I forgot C in here, and I will inherit from the attribute class, and all I will have here is an int property called duration. So duration, and let's say in here the duration in seconds that the response will be cast. So now back to our getHero query. Let me fix that typo, and now, as you can see, we have the duration, and it says the duration in seconds that the response will be cast. Okay, so next I'm going to create a cache service, because we don't want all that caching logic to be duplicated and around all over the place. So I'm going to create a new class. For simplicity reasons, I will put it in the root of our project. I will call that CacheService, and we will have two methods in here, one for setting something to the cache and one for getting it back. So first of all, I'm going to inject the iDistributed cache interface that comes from the Redis. So private read-only iDistributed cache, and I will call that distributed cache. I will initialize it from the constructor, and let's create first the method for getting something. Let's say public async task of T, because we want to work with every type we want to cache, and that could be nullable. Actually, it won't be nullable exactly, but we'll see that in a minute. So let's say get async, and we'll have a string that would be our key, and a cancellation token, of course. So cancellation token. Okay, so first of all, we need to try to get that cast value as a string. So let's say var cast value equals with await distributed cache dot get string async, and we will pass the key and the cancellation token. And now if that cast value is not null, so if not string is null or empty cast value, we want to deserialize that and return it. So let's say return JSON serializer dot deserialize to that T, and let's pass the cast value. And if it's null, let's return default. We can't return null in here because that could be something that does not have a null value. So we'll say default, but in our example we will treat everything as if it could be nullable. So now let's create a method for setting something to the cache. So say public async task, let's say set async, and we will have again a key, so string key, our value, so t value, also a time span that will be our expiration, so time span expiration, and a cancellation token, of course, so cancellation token, and let's go to our heroes controller and let's copy and paste that. So that will be the key and that will be the value. So now let's create an interface for that. Okay, let's register that now so we don't forget it later. So let's say CacheService, and the implementation is the CacheService. And now we have a service to cache and get something from the cache. And then now we need to create a behavior for our mediator. So I'm going to create a new class and I will call that CacheBehavior. And we will have a T request, a T response, and we will implement the pipeline behavior of T request and T response, and let's add a constraint that the T request implements the base request. And now in here, first of all, let's inject the cache service, so private read-only CacheService. CacheService, let's initialize that from the constructor, and now in here will be all our logic. First we want to try to see if in the request if in that request there is an attribute, there is a cached attribute. So I'm going to say var CacheAttribute equals with request.getType.getCustom attributes, and we want that attributes to be of type CacheAttribute, and we want the first or the default, so first or default, and that is getCustom attributes, I'm sorry, so first or default, and let's also make that async, we will need that later. Okay, so now if that request doesn't have a cached attribute, we can say to continue. So if cached attribute is null, await next. But if it has a cache attribute, we need to try to get the value from the cache instead of going to the handler. So first of all, we will need the key, and we will say var key equals with, and let's have a method responsible for doing that. We will say generate key, and let's write the definition of that method, and we will implement that later. So private static string generate key, and for that we will need the request, so the request, let's pass it also in from there. Okay, let's continue as if we had the key. So we'll try to get the cached value, so var cached value equals with CacheService.getAsync, and that will be a type of T request, of T response, I'm sorry, and we need also to await that, and we will pass the key and the cancellation token. Okay, so if that cached value is not null, so if cached value is not null, we will just return that value, so return cast value. If it is null, we will go to our handler, so we will say var response equals await next, and that the response will come from the handler. And now before we return the response, we need to cache it. So let's first take the duration that we want to cache that response. So let's say var duration equals with CacheAttribute.duration, and we know that that's not null because we check it here. So let's say await CacheService.setAsync, and we need to pass the key, the value that will be our response. And since the duration is in seconds, let's say timespan dot from seconds, and let's pass the duration and also the cancellation token, and that should store the response to our cache. So finally, let's return the response. Okay, everything seems ready except that generate key method. Now we will use a pattern that will be like first the name of the request and then every property with the name and the value. So first let's take the request name, so var request name equals with request.getType.name. Now we want to take all the properties, so let's say var properties equals with request.getType.getProperties, and what that what that binding flag publish and the binding flag instance will do is that the binding flags.public will take the public properties, and that binding flag instance will take the instance properties, so it won't take any static properties, and that's what we want. And now let's create a string builder, so let's say var sb equals with new string builder, and let's say sb.append, and we want the request name, so request name. And now let's iterate through those properties, so let's say properties for each, so for each property in properties sb.append, let's say an underscore, and then the property.name, then another underscore, and then the property.value, get value, and we need to pass the instance of the object that we want to get the value, and that will be our request. And you can only have the value in the key to have a smaller key, but I'll leave it as it is for now. And finally we will return that key, so sb.toString. And the only thing left now is back in our program.cs to register that cache behavior. So let's say builder.service. Let's say add the scope.transient, and the type of iPipeline behavior, and the implementation will be type of cache behavior. So now everything should work fine. Let's go to our cache behavior and put a breakpoint in here. And actually, let's go back to our here's controller and remove that logic and all that as well, and inject only the mediator. So private read only iSender. Let's call that sender. Initialize that. And now we just need to say return sender.send, and we need to await that. A new get hero query with that ID and the cancellation token. and that it's a hero query, not a hero query handler. So that will be our hero, and then we'll return OK with that hero. And we have our breakpoint in here, so let's try to debug that. I'll also open Postman, and I will hit that endpoint with the ID 1. And now we hit our breakpoint. As you can see, the cache attribute is there and the duration is 20 as we set it. For the key, as you can see, it's get hero query underscore ID underscore 1. We will try to get that value. That cache value is null since we don't have anything in our cache yet. So we will take the response from the handler. The response, as you can see, is a hero with ID of 1 and name Spider-Man. We will take the duration that would be 20 seconds. We will store it and we will return our response. So if I hit continue, as you can see, we got back Spider-Man. And if I try that again, now when we try to get that value, as you can see, it is there. So if I hit continue, we will get that from the cache, and you can see also the time is now 20 seconds passed, so we get that from the handler, and we have that request took half a second, because in our repository, if you remember, we set a fake half a second delay, and if I do that again, it takes 4 milliseconds, now again half a second, and 4 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds. So everything worked as expected, and anytime I have a new query that I want to cache its result, all I need to do is just decorate it with that cache attribute and set the duration in minutes. And you can have a default value in here, but we'll leave it as it is for now. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a nice one.